fantastic to have you here.
I'm just trying to find how to share my.
Can I ask you all to please mute yourselves? Not you, Alexis. Do not mute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, it definitely works. The password works.
Why am I not? Hi, Gilda. How's it, Gilda? Nice to see you here. Sorry about the delay, everybody.
Good luck to see you.
Why am I not able to upload from my...
You should be able to just screen share. So if you go into your desktop and open the file that you want to share, and then say new share and share it from there.
All right, let me see. Okay, hold on. Nope. It's not giving me an option to share to Zoom though.
Sorry, I gotta just hang myself on my scarf quickly.
Share screen, and then it's not giving me an option to share from my.
If you look at the bottom of the on my laptop, if you look at the bottom of your laptop, where your files are, I don't know what you're working on, but if you go into your files, highlight a file and open it, and then go screen share and then new share.
Okay, hold on.
So tonight's been interesting, everybody. Thank you all for your patience while we sort out the technical issues of Zoom not working, then my email not working, and now we can't share. So we're having, it's Wednesday night, people haven't got power, it's cold, it's just absolutely fabulously entertaining. Claire, are you warm? Because you look quite snug, like an Eskimo. What are you wearing?
I'm freezing.
Oh, so you live in a house like mine, do you?
Yeah.
Cold. Yeah. That's why I'm wearing a beanie indoors and a scarf and socks and. Alexis, do you want to WhatsApp me the photos and I'll WhatsApp them to people? I'll just put them on the group.
Oh God, that's terrible, because you can't now use your emails.
Yeah, because I got Brett off the line, so I can't even come back in.
Sorry, everyone. I mean, maybe we're going to just have to redo this.
Let's just talk right now. Let's just talk about pangolins. I
All
mean,
right.
we all know what a pangolin looks
guys,
like.
I'm sorry. I've got a beautiful, beautiful slideshow that I've prepared for you. It's not giving me an option to share it to you. I'm going to just open it. If I do this, can you still see me? You can. So let me just open my slideshow so that I can see what I'm doing at least. All right. Can you hear me, everyone? I know you're on mute. I've got the most magnificent photographs, and I'm just very disappointed that I can't share them with you, but I'll talk about it. So the topic for today was the plight of the pangolin. Now, pangolins are 8 species of pangolins, and together they have their own order, which is called the Pholidota. Okay, so sorry, I'm just switching my phone off. So, you know, an order of animals is, for example, a whole family of animals that fit together because of the food that they eat, the biology of their bodies, etc. So for example, in the order of elephants, you have 3 different kinds of species. So in the order Pholidota, which are pangolins, and they have their own order because they're so unique, you have 8 different species of pangolins. Okay. Basically 4 in Asia and 4 in Africa. So pangolins are mammals. They have mammary glands. They give birth to live young and they breastfeed their babies. They also carry their babies on their backs when they go out foraging. And the first experiences that a baby or a pup, as it's called, would have of eating ants would be on the mother's back, where it starts to lick them off from between the scales. So the world pangolin ranges, basically, as I said, there are 4 pangolin species in Africa and 4 in Asia. We will send you these photographs by WhatsApp anyway, so that you can see what I've been talking about, okay? So in terms of the ranges in Africa, they spread out across West and East Africa, and we have pangolins in South Africa as well, but in the northern area of South Africa, where it borders with Namibia, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and yeah.
Angola, Southwest Africa, Botswana. Hang on, which one is it?
Namibia, Botswana as well. Okay, so basically in Africa we've got, you know, right through Africa we've got a white-bellied pangolin, we've got a giant ground pangolin, a black-bellied pangolin, and a Temminck's ground pangolin. Okay, those are the 4 African species. Some of them are arboreal, which means that they forage for ants in the trees, and the arboreal species, especially the black-bellied pangolin, which has a very long tail, lives 50 to 100 meters high up in the rainforest canopy. Okay.
You've actually worked with black ones, black-stomached
Yes,
pangolins, haven't you?
I have. I'm one of the few people in the world actually that has worked with black-bellied pangolins, and I'll get into how I got involved with pangolins. I'm just so sorry you can't see these pictures right now, but anyway, in Asia you basically have the Indian pangolin that dominates the whole of India. You've got the Chinese pangolin that dominates the whole of China, which is critically endangered. Okay.
Not surprising, knowing the Chinese.
Yeah, well, and I'll give you the reasons for that a bit later, but critically endangered means that the genetic pool is not big enough to be healthy. So there's going to be interbreeding, and that makes it critically endangered. Okay, after that it goes to endangered, and then, after critically endangered it goes to extinct. You've got the Philippine pangolin, which is all over the area of Malaysia and the Philippines. And then you've got the Sunda pangolin, which is basically Vietnam and those areas, all in the south, basically the South China Sea area. So the Sunda pangolin, which is in Vietnam, which borders China in the south of China, also gets trafficked into China as a live pangolin as well. Most of the others get trafficked in just as scales or frozen meat. Okay. Going on, the Temminck's ground pangolin, which is what we have in northern South Africa, is a ground pangolin. Okay, it's the only bipedal pangolin. Bipedal means that it walks on its back feet, and it uses its front feet to forage. So it balances, it almost floats with the front feet off the ground, and then it's got 3 long claws in the front, which it uses for foraging for ants off the ground or termites out of a termite mound. The tail balances off the ground and gives the animal balance. So it's held off the ground and it gives the animal balance. When we're looking at the health of a pangolin, if a pangolin's dragging its tail on the ground, for us, we know immediately that it's not in good health. Okay, that's especially for the Temminck's ground pangolin that gives itself balance because it's bipedal and the front legs are off the ground. So outside of that, it has scales made of keratin that form external armor. It has a long sticky tongue for harvesting ants that is attached to the end of the sternum. So basically the tongue is almost in the pelvic area. It's attached almost in the pelvic area or just in front of the pelvic area. And it takes up 3/4 of the body. That's how long the tongue is. It's got fine hair around the eyes for protection while digging, a conical snout for foraging in ant nests and termite mounds, and then no scales on the face and underbelly. So the underside of the face and the whole of the underbelly is very soft, sometimes covered in fine hair, but it's an extremely soft area. And then the 3 long curved claws on the front limbs adapted for digging, and short nails on the hind limbs. The hind limbs almost look like elephant feet, or sort of, and when it lies on its back, it almost looks like a teddy bear. Okay, going forwards. There's a picture that I've got there of a Temminck's ground pangolin, and also a diagram of all of those parts. So just to give you a little bit of background on me and how I started working with pangolins. Basically, I started getting involved with wildlife rehabilitation in 2014. And I've got an overseas wildlife rehabilitation accreditation. So I've worked with many, many different wildlife species. I've specialized in garden birds, hand rearing them from neonatal right up to release. I've rehabilitated owls from 5 days old to release. I've worked with bats. I've done a lot of work with bats as well. I started to become aware of pangolins because the people around me at that time were already aware of the problem with pangolins and had started working with them. And because they're such a mystical, hardly seen and very rare animal, there's this sort of enigma around them that got me very interested in the species. But we had actually, I think there had only been one live pangolin that had ever come into our clinic at that time. So very few people had ever seen them. And I knew that the only way of working with them and getting some experience with them was to find an exceptional opportunity, which I found as an advert from a group called Sangha Lodge in the Central African Republic, who were advertising for a volunteer to come and look after basically she was 6 weeks old at the time. Well, no, she was older. She was about 2 months old, black-bellied pangolin, which is one of the arboreal pangolins. And they're probably, arguably, the most beautiful of all of them. They're also very small. They only grow to about 2.5 kgs in weight. Oh,
well, that's tiny.
Yeah. At fully grown, whereas our Temminck's ground pangolins go up to about 17 kgs. And then the giant ground pangolin, which is very, very rarely seen, which lives in the rainforests of Central Africa, goes up to 35 kgs. So the black-bellied pangolin and the white-bellied pangolin are the 2 smallest species, and that's what you find up in Central Africa. So they had a pangolin pup, their black-bellied pangolin pup, and they needed a volunteer to look after, and I grabbed the opportunity, not thinking of what it would entail at all. And I have done some crazy things in my life, like lived in Indian temples for 10 years. But I forgot that, you know, when you're, what was I at the time, 50, you know, jumping on a plane to the Central African Republic, where they, you know, the only clinic is a kind of very, very simple shack. And if you need medical attention, you basically have to get out of there, airlifted. So, but anyway, it's one of the sort of typical things that I'll do is go on a great adventure, which I did. And I looked after this pangolin pup there for 2 months. I had a very unique, And the last 2 weeks that I was there, a white-bellied pangolin pup came in who was about 6 weeks old, and he became my responsibility. And they had very undeveloped rehabilitation and clinic facility. So he slept in my bed for 2 weeks, and I did well with him. I initiated his bottle feeding, and he grew up nicely. And then, of course, I had to hand him over when I left.
They tagged before they're released.
Trauma for me. Sorry?
Are they tagged before they're released back into the wild?
Yes. Well, these two weren't. Oko, who was the white-bellied pangolin, unfortunately died when he was 6 months old of pneumonia. But the black-bellied pangolin, Pangy, became a huge ambassador for her species. And she wasn't tagged, but she was watched by the Ba'aka pygmies, who are the indigenous people of that area, for up to 2 years.
How long do they live for?
Forest. Sorry?
How long do they live for?
Well, like pretty much like a cat. So from up to about 18 years. She also died eventually of a stomach parasite, which was also a great pity. But, you know, it changed my life and changed the course of my life, in that I became very dedicated to the species. I've got some beautiful pictures here of the Ba'aka pygmies and the flowers in the rainforest that fall off the trees. I mean, you can hardly imagine what that rainforest is like. It's such a powerful entity with such an energy that is nothing like the nature that we ordinarily experience. You know, my ideas of going off the grid up into Central Africa, not having much connectivity, although we did have a generator that came on twice a day. You know, my idea was to
kind of like living in Joburg. Sorry.
Yeah, my idea was to get off the grid and, you know, reconnect with nature. And I mean, when I came to face to face with this formidable entity, the rainforest, it was nothing like nothing like my imaginings of nature at all. It's you know, it's of course completely unknown, and you know, you feel like a stranger in a completely unknown landscape. Of course, the pygmies know the rainforest like we know the city, and they guided me into the rainforest every day for foraging. So I was with Pangy for natural foraging. So I had an incredible experience with the pygmies of the rainforest as well. And, you know, indigenous groups all over the world are very vulnerable and very threatened. They're essentially as threatened as the ecosystems that they live in. So they're as threatened as the rainforest and the animals in the rainforest, like pangolins. And I feel very strongly, and I'm very interested in those indigenous tribes as well. So basically, why are pangolins the most trafficked mammal on the planet? Last year alone, there was confiscations of 97 tons of pangolin scales out of Africa and into Asia. That's the equivalent of 155,000 pangolins. So, and this has been going on for at least 10 years, certainly from 2008, when the first confiscations of pangolins started to occur, or the first inklings of this mammoth illegal trade in pangolins started to surface. So why are they so traded? Why are they the most traded mammal on the planet? So the reason is, and I've got a picture here of Chinese medicine, a pangolin on a box of Chinese medicine. So this is the reason. Chinese traditional medicine consumes an unsustainable amount of pangolin scales. Pangolin scales were not originally used in Chinese medicine, as it dates back 5,000 years or so. Chinese medicine was originally herbal, but somehow or another, you know, they've crept into Chinese medicine. And in fact, we have a sense that new medicines are being created in order to spur on this trade, which is highly lucrative as well.
What possible benefit could, I mean, the scales are keratin, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
So what possible benefit can keratin have to the human?
Well, you know, I mean, you know, there's actually no scientific examination of any Chinese traditional medicine, so we don't know. I mean, essentially, it shouldn't have any medicinal properties. But according to the Chinese medical practitioners that I've spoken to, they're quite convinced that it does work. But Chinese medicine has never been, does not have any scientific proof of it whatsoever. So it operates almost, I mean, if I could try and describe to you how their medicine works, it would be like our Chinese, like our African medicine works. It almost has an energetic principle and a metaphoric personality or signature. So, for example, because the pangolin has these claws that claw through colonies of ants and termites, and because it has this long tongue that you know, traverses through these channels of termite mounds, it's used for blocking, it's used for clearing blockages. So that's what it's basically used for. It's used for stimulating lactation, clearing blockages in the body. So it's almost the energetic, from what I can see and understand, it's the energetic principle that applies.
Okay.
Okay, going on, I mean, there's a picture here of sacks and sacks of pangolin scales. And of course, you know, they're disembodied pangolin scales. So when you look at them, you can't relate them or identify them as a pangolin in any way. You know, but when you're working with this creature and you see the nature of this creature, which is an ancient mystical creature, it's been on this planet for 85 million years. So it has the combined consciousness of 85 million years on this planet and is venerated in so many different mystical and traditional cultures in Africa and in Asia. It's always considered the wise old man. So it has that quality and always seems to make eye contact with you. It's quite an incredible thing from the time of, you know, retrieval from the trade, when you, you know, get a pangolin out of the trade in a sack and you open the sack for the first time, the first thing that happens is it makes eye contact with you. But outside of that, it's an extremely charming, endearing, solitary animal, and all it wants to do is eat ants. I mean, it'll crawl between your face between your feet with no other intention except to innocently do its business, which is to eat ants. So basically what we've got between Africa and Asia is that Asia's pangolins have gone, essentially are critically endangered. And what we've got in Africa and Asia, and I've got an illustration here for you, which illustrates the perfect storm, which is two circles that cross over in the middle. So on one side, you've got in Africa desperately poor people with a commodity, which are the pangolin scales. And on the other side, a country with an enormous demand for scales and an emerging middle class, which is Asia. And in between that, you've got the perfect storm. So as long as there's a market for it or a demand, there will be a trade. And there's very, I mean, you know, the task of you know, getting this trade under control from the supply side of it is like a Rubik's Cube. You know, Rubik's Cube, you turn one area, which is, say, hunters and poachers that need alternative income. And then another area goes out, which would be, you know, the eating of pangolins for bushmeat. And then you create an alternative protein and then, you know, something else goes out. I mean, it's a massive, massive endeavor to try and, you know, create some control. The best thing would be to minimize the demand on the China side. China's under a lot of pressure because of the coronavirus, and it did recently uplist pangolins from a status 2 animal, where it doesn't have a, you know, where it can still be traded regionally, so that's within China only, to a status 1 animal where it has full protection. But of course that means, you know,
More black market.
not necessarily, it just means a huge amount of law enforcement. It can mean a black market, but it doesn't necessarily. Then they also said that they were taking pangolin scales out of the Chinese pharmacopoeia, which is what we've been waiting for, because basically outside of China, so internationally, CITES, which is the Convention for the International Trade in Endangered Species, has listed pangolins as an Appendix 1 animal, which means absolutely no trade whatsoever. But then, of course, you know, enforcement has also been a major issue because the trade has continued and, in fact, increased. But within China, there is still a small legal trade. So what the Chinese government has promised is that they'll use existing stockpiles from confiscations. That was obviously pre-2016 when CITES disabled all the trade. So whatever existing stockpiles they had, they said they'd use for certain patented Chinese medicines. And so they continued to apparently use those stockpiles. But of course, you know, there's no way of determining one scale from another except through DNA, you know. So who knows how much illicit confiscated pangolin scales came into those government stockpiles. Now, the patented medicines in China are distributed out of legal hospitals that are representatives of legally dispersed Chinese medicines. Okay, so you're supposed to go and get it from an accredited hospital, and there you will get patented medicines that still have Chinese scales in them. So the problem now is that China has evidently taken them out of the pharmacopoeia, but the patented medicines still contain pangolin scales. So when they say they've taken it out of the pharmacopoeia, they're talking about raw ingredients in certain pangolin, in certain Chinese traditional concoctions, but the patented medicines continue to exist. So we still have a huge fight with China to get them out of the patented medicines. And of course, the NGOs all over the world put enormous pressure on China, and the media as well, expose all of these things. So going on now, I've got just a map of the world, which shows basically where the pangolin scales are coming out of Africa and the route into China. We pinpointed Nigeria as the largest collection point and exporter of pangolin scales to China in 2019. But I've actually just been having conversations with someone in the DRC, and he says that all of the pangolin scales that go into Nigeria are coming out of the DRC. So, you know, there's a lot that we don't know and haven't uncovered in terms of the trade in deepest, darkest Africa. And, you know, these kind of investigations continue.
Alexis, how do they, if nobody sees pangolins, how are they caught?
Okay, so that's a great question, and something that people ask all the time, because, you know, where do these quantities of scales come from? So there's certain things that we aren't supposed to say, because all it does is it spreads the word of how these pangolin scales are collected. But I'm not going to mention one of the methods. Okay? Mm-hmm. What I will say is that, first of all, they've been collected along with other hunters of illegal wildlife species.
Oh, so let's grab we'll grab a gorilla here, and oh, by the way, we've got 5 pangolins.
Of course, and all of the agents, they're all commodities in the illegal trade of wildlife. But also what you've got in African countries, and this I can say, is that you've got hunters or shepherds that go out every day and they know the land inside out. Pangolins live in burrows. So if you find a burrow and you see evidence of a pangolin going inside, all you need to do is wait until night falls, because they're nocturnal, and you'll catch a pangolin. Okay. If that gives you some idea, there is another way that they're using at the moment, which is much more problematic. It's got to do with scenting them out. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Okay, so then I've got 3 pictures here of the African Pangolin Working Group. I'm one of the board members. There are only 4 board members. And I've got a picture of 3 of us. One is Ray Janssen. He's the chairman of the African Pangolin Working Group, and he's a professor, and he's done massive amounts of international research and publication of papers. He's an international name, but he also prides himself on being boots on the ground, an ex-army person. He is an expert in setting up sting operations. And he's the one who liaises with the middleman who brings in the salespeople. And he personally goes into these sting operations with police support, and they're constantly bringing down poachers. And then
is his focus only pangolins, or does he deal with other?
Only pangolins.
Okay.
Only pangolins. He's actually an ornithologist, but his focus has been pangolins since 2009. And then we follow every single case, and we sit in every single case and give evidence in aggravation. You get the maximum you can get for poaching a pangolin is 10 million rand or 10 years in jail. But the sentencing really, really varies. Anything from 3 years in jail or a suspended sentence up to our most is 8 years in jail. So we continue to be very, very disappointed with the National Prosecuting Authority and the fact that they aren't taking this more seriously. Next to Ray, I've got a picture here of Nikki Wright. She's our rehabilitation expert. She's been involved with rehabilitating animals for 18 years and an expert in pangolin rehabilitation since 2011, when the African Pangolin Working Group was established. And then there's a picture of me just watching a pangolin eating ants. So pretty much what I'm saying here is that we're ordinary people saving a species from extinction. So we've dedicated our lives to this animal, this creature. I don't get paid for the work that I do from the African Pangolin Working Group. I do get a percentage commission from fundraising that I do, and I also do get paid minimally for the investigative journalism work that I do. I come from a media background, so I was in journalism and in the film industry. So I continue to use my journalism to do investigative reporting. If you Google me, you'll see I've done a fair number of investigative reports. I just want to go on to very quickly, and I know that I'm going way over time here. How is everybody situated?
You're not going over time. We're actually very comfortable. Don't stress. You've only been talking for half an hour or so.
Okay, but I mean over the scheduled time.
No. Anyway. I reset the meeting, so really don't worry. If anybody wants to go, they know that we won't hold it against them.
Okay, great. So what I want to do is chat to you about is South Africa's involvement with the trade in pangolins, which is on the rise. We have a very, very different trade in pangolins to the trade in Central Africa, West and East Africa. We have a very, very different kind of trade. We are not, our trade just want to see something. Okay, our trade in South Africa is not in pangolin scales, although we anticipate that it may develop into that. What we have in South Africa are a lot of communities with very rich cultural lives and an understanding of pangolins as the creature that denotes the medicine man. This is the pangolin is considered hugely lucky and has to be treated very carefully. If the pangolin is killed in the wrong way and his blood falls on the ground or spills on the ground, then a great drought is forecast. And basically, you know, many local communities in Venda and elsewhere, you know, Limpopo and Mpumalanga have grown up knowing about pangolins as being part of our traditional medicine. But our traditional medicine has always been sustainable because you'll get a Sangoma basically who will use one pangolin scale for his entire life. So he'll have that one pangolin scale in his medicine bag and he'll scrape away at it. And if he doesn't have that, he can use something instead. So our traditional medicine has never been an issue here in South Africa. We don't have pangolins as meat. So people, there's no big meat eating component here, although you do have people living on the outskirts of game parks that are not getting, you know, they're not getting what they consider would be a shared commodity, which is the game inside of wildlife parks. And so there is a lot of poaching or snaring that goes on. But generally, pangolins are not what they eat. So what is happening now is that word has spread and filtered down through the ranks that there's a huge market for pangolins in China, but that also there's a huge, but that aside from that, that there's a market for pangolins. Okay, maybe, sorry, I'll go back on it. Not that there's a huge market in China. They may be aware of that, but there's no a factory facility for selling scales at this point. But that there is a market for pangolins and that they have a very high value. So we get people doing opportunistic trade. So they'll go into, for example, Zimbabwe or Mozambique or Botswana, or they'll have a contact there who's found a pangolin who'll bring them across the border very easily because the borders are so porous.
Yeah.
And they'll have a contact in South Africa and they'll set up a little network of people who'll go out looking for someone to buy the pangolin. And the sale of pangolins or the trade of pangolins in South Africa is live pangolins. And they will be asking for anything from 200,000, 250,000 Rand up to 500,000 Rand per pangolin.
Wow, that does make it valuable.
Yeah.
What about this law that the government have changed recently that non-domestic meats are things that you can eat?
Yeah, well, you know, that's now a whole ongoing huge issue, you know, massive issue that, you know, there's no representation from ethical scientists or conservationists, and it's an exclusively trade based panel. So you must know which way it's going. But anyway, at least it's getting publicity. So basically, I've got a collage of photographs of what our sting operations look like, what a pangolin that we pull out of the trade looks like, what sort of casing that they'll use to keep the pangolin in. And basically, the sooner that we get a pangolin out of the trade, the sooner that we can put it into rehabilitation, and the possibility that there is for us that we can safely release it back into you know, a wild environment that's suitable and well protected. But anything over 7 days and that pangolin is not going to survive. I mean, you know, they get offered all kinds of strange things to eat, but they want is ants. They will only eat ants or termites. You know, try catching ants. Enough ants.
They can come camp in my kitchen during summer.
300 to 400 grams. 300 grams. Because you know those big safari or Impala butters, you know, those big
Yeah.
blocks of butter. That's
500.
500 grams.
That's a shitload of ants.
That's a lot of ants.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically they'll survive for a certain amount of time if they're drinking water, but you know, we got a video a couple of days ago of a pangolin that's being offered. Ray was setting up a sting operation. We were all on tender hooks. We all had instruction to go to the meet up at the Rustenburg police station, which is where the sting operation was due to go down, and they went underground. So I mean, Ray was, you know, we've seen the pangolin, we've seen him in the video, and we cannot get our hands on him.
And how long? I mean, they've had him for a while already.
Yeah, I mean, unless they come up again. He said that the guys are terrified.
Is this, I mean, just sorry to go off the subject of poaching, and pangolins, are they family oriented creatures, or do they live alone, or they live in?
No, they're completely solitary. They're entirely solitary and nocturnal. So the babies, the pups, they're mammals, so they need a lot of attention and a lot of you know, emotional interaction as a mammal. But as an adult, they are completely solitary and they have no interest in interacting at all.
And how long do they stay with mom for?
Up to a year, and up to 2 years in her sort of territory.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they have to head out. And how many sort of babies does she have at once on average?
She only has one pup a year or every 18 months.
Okay, so 150,000.
You know.
So to harvest 150,000 a year is devastating. I mean, how do we come back from that?
Yeah, exactly, Mandy. You get the picture, and you also can't farm them because you can't. Not that I would be in favor of farming at all. I wouldn't. I mean, I want to preserve nature in its you know, for me, the value of nature is in its wild form, in wild places.
Yeah.
You know, I can't bear the idea of the human proliferation and the encroachment on the natural world, you know.
But it's the nature of man to do that. We do that all the time. I mean, it kills me when you drive around Joburg and you see an open piece of veldt, and a week later you see bulldozers in there because now we're developing. Well, why do we have to develop every piece of open land? You know, why can't we just leave it open? It's because human greed, and there's no getting around there.
Yeah, well, you know, our encroachment on nature is a big price to pay, and we are paying it right now. So, I mean, just going to the coronavirus and how pangolins have been involved with that, just very, very briefly. What happened was, and I've also got a picture of a meat market in China, just to give you a sense of how animals are kept, wildlife are kept in those wet markets. So there's a difference between a wet market and wildlife sold at wet markets. A wet market is basically is basically, you know, often fish are sold at wet markets, but it's where you know, a lot of fresh produce is sold as well. But wildlife sold at wet markets is quite a different category. You know, wet markets are basically a phenomenon all over Asia and in America. They're organic markets where produce is sold at a good price, and that's the way people basically shop and buy. But wildlife in wet markets is the problem. So what happens with wildlife, which you know, is also a cultural thing, this eating of wildlife and exotic meat, and you know, they're stacked in cages, one on top of the next. So first of all, they're in a very stressful situation, which gives them a lowered immunity. Second of all, you've got creatures that are cross-pollinating in cages on top of each other, which would never normally come into contact in the wild. So while wildlife have pathogens that are not dangerous to them and are fine in their own wild environments, once they cross over with the pathogens of other wildlife, they mutate, those pathogens mutate, and they become they become a third pathogen or a mutated virus, and that crosses over into people. Viruses mutate all the time. That's the problem with them. They're constantly changing. So when you've got, for example, a civet cat, or say bats, a cage full of bats, which is where the coronavirus was thought to come from, horseshoe bats. So you've got a whole big cage of bats on top of a cage with a pangolin in it underneath. And you've got bats excrement dropping down into the pangolin cage, and the pangolin's licking the bottom of the cage with its tongue, trying to find something to eat, and consumes or imbibes a bat pathogen. It then, transmutates and becomes a virus. It's a mutated virus, and this crosses over to humans. So this is where it was thought to originate, and every virus that we've ever suffered from, SARS, Ebola, AIDS, have all originated from animals. And it's not exclusive to wildlife. They're finding coronavirus in farms. They've just found coronavirus. They've just tested for coronavirus and found it on a chopping board in China that was used exclusively for imported salmon.
Yeah, well, I mean, farm salmon and everything contains mercury to start with. Alexis, are you vegetarian?
Sure. I'm vegan, actually.
Yeah, I was going to go there, and I thought, let me go vegetarian first.
Yeah, I've been vegetarian since 1985 when I started living in temples. I lived in an Indian temple for 10 years, and I became vegetarian at that time, and then I became vegan about 6 years ago.
Yeah, well, when you work with animals like that, you wonder how people can eat them or hurt them, or
Well, they do. I work. I work from my heart space. That is not a scientific thing to say, at all. But
You're amongst friends. You don't have to be.
I'm much more on the side of the humanities. I'm much more interested. Actually, science has become a background for me. It has to be if I want to work in conservation. But I'm much more on the side of art, film, music. And those are also wonderful ways to reach people and for creating awareness and sharing a message, But I'm also I'm idealistic, Mandi. I'm very, very idealistic,
They
So
can only lead to heartache. They can only lead to heartache.
Essentially, I've learned how to cope with it because I have to. Otherwise I wouldn't continue working in this. But we take a lot of strain, hey? Make no bones about it.
So what can we as Go Public do to help you?
Mandi, when we share the slides, I've got a breakdown of what it costs us basically for every individual pangolin that's confiscated from the trade, comes in for hospitalization and rehabilitation, and then soft release into a suitable environment with telemetry. And basically what we are looking at, each individual pangolin is just under 47,000 Rand.
That's a lot of money for one pangolin. Wow.
It's a lot of money. It's a hell of a lot of money. And, as an NGO, of course, we are sustained by donations from the public. We've got a Give and Gain campaign that's just going up at the moment. So that would be a nice way to give a donation if anybody's in a position to do so. And of course, whatever you do helps, 100 Rand, 200 Rand, 500 Rand, whatever it is. And then of course, we basically are looking to use, people's expertise. If they are interested to get involved and dedicate some of their time to giving back to this magnificent species, then, I mean, there's so many things we're looking for. We're looking for accountants and bookkeepers and graphic designers and website managers and social media people. And I mean, there's, you know, whatever you can do for pangolins, basically. So the thing is, you know, if you offered your time and you had any expertise, then I would say contact us.
What's my expertise? I've just learned how to do Canva.
You just learned how to do what?
Canva. All the posters are done on Canva, and that's been a hell of a learning curve doing that.
Stunning, fantastic. Anyway, that's pretty much it, Mandi. I think I've done my time. Again, you know, if we can just share the pictures with everybody through WhatsApp, then you'll recognize, you know, the pictures that I've been referring to, everyone. I'm sorry that we didn't have the, thanks everybody for your messages. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions?
Yeah, are there any questions before we let Alexis go to her green bean for supper? Well, I made a delicious bean and lentil casserole.
My background's in the cooking industry. In case you didn't know, I taught Indian cooking for 20 years in Johannesburg, so I'm not short of things to cook or eat.
Just before I let you go, I wanted to ask you about the picture in the background, that baobab.
Oh yeah.
Because we had an amazing discussion last night with Julian Ortler from TreeWorks, and the issue that they have now is in Africa. Well, we are in Africa, but further north of us, they are chopping down 1,000-year-old baobabs for wood to export to China for furniture. And he actually showed us a picture of a guy standing next to this enormous tree. I mean, the guy was minuscule next to the tree with this huge gash on the side of the tree where they were cutting it down. And there were a row of trucks with all these tree stumps, well, huge tree stumps, you know, just waiting to ship out. It was absolute tragedy. But in his background, he had a picture as well.
In South Africa, Mandi?
Not in South Africa, somewhere in the north. Where baobabs are more prolific.
Yeah, logging is shocking. You see it all over Africa.
So we were talking about the plight of our trees, and it was actually quite heartbreaking because between developers and shot-hole borer and harvesting for firewood and harvesting for Chinese furniture, our forests are being decimated. And he said within the next 5 years, Joburg would have lost something like 5 million trees. You know, people are not taking the shot-hole borer seriously. Government is not taking it seriously. And the thing that struck me in your talk was exactly the same thing that he said last night. Government isn't coming to the party with regards to the trees. So it doesn't surprise me that government doesn't come to the party with regards to the pangolins or any other species that's under threat. You know, they can't avoid rhinos now because rhinos are really big animals. You know, and you find one dead, it makes the news.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the heartening thing about it, Mandi, is that there are a lot of people out there doing a lot of good work, you know. And all we're doing basically when we get involved is contributing to the mass, you know, of people out there that are concerned, that are getting involved, that are doing something. And, no one is alone in their endeavors here. But we need more. We need more. We need a huge, colossal move and change, actually, of the way that we live on this planet. Obviously, whether it will or will not happen, I don't know. I have to surrender to the fact that I can't control this. But I do know that it's more difficult for me to not do anything, first of all. I can't bear the idea. And second of all, that if these animals, and we're living at a very significant time, a crazy significant time, and I do feel that if this is the end of nature as we know it, and the end of these incredible species that have been here for 85 million years or more, that I want to be with them. I want to be with them. I want to be interacting with them. If I have to be walking on the edge of extinction with them, well, that's where I'm going to be.
Which is fair enough. You know, I actually said to Julian last night, these last few months have been amazing because humans have stood still and nature's had a chance to regroup and have blue skies, and, you know, animals are coming back in, and now we're getting back on the hamster wheel and it's all going to go back. So hopefully people will take cognizance of the fact that the earth needs a chance to breathe and it needs to regroup, and humans really are the plague on the planet, nothing else.
Well,
So,
if we don't change, this is just the beginning of a domino effect, because we have really overstepped our mark. I mean, there's no question about that.
well, that's why things like this virus are nature's way of striking back, and yet our response is to find a way around it and stamp it back down again. You know, when it should actually be culling people in their millions, it's not. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day, everybody. And I think everybody in this room actually knows my opinion on what should happen to the human race. You know, like 75% needs to drop dead to save the planet.
Well, you're not the only one out there. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming again. Profound apologies for not being able to share my slides with you. But Mandi, will you send it to everyone?
Absolutely.
On
I'll send it out on the group now as soon as you send it to me. And then you'll send me details in case anybody wants to send you a donation or anything. And Alexis, I can't thank you enough. It's been fantastic talking to you this evening.
Good.
Pangolins are absolutely gorgeous. And
Yeah, they are.
so yeah, let's see what we can do to help the plight of the pangolin, not the human.
Good. Nice meeting you, everybody.
Likewise. So tomorrow night's talk on butterflies has been moved to Saturday. I'm sure you all saw that because I've got load shedding tomorrow evening. And in case you want to know why it says butterflyist and not lepidopterist, it's because he said to me, I'm a butterflyist, I'm not a lepidopterist. So there we go. Have a great evening, everybody. See you on Friday.
Thanks for doing this, Mandi. Bye, everybody.
Go well. Bye.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.